How many black teachers or African American teachers do you remember since your first grade year? You don't have to give me an exact number, just give me a roundabout. Anybody?
4.
You've had 4.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Less than 5.
Less than 5. Okay.
About 3 or 4 for me.
About 3 or 4?
5.
You've had 5.
Yeah.
Do we need those bias trainings, and why do we need them? Who wants to start?
I can start. Yes, I definitely do think we need them, only because a lot of these teachers are not aware of what other students are, what home and what reality looks like to other students. So when you have one perspective on certain things as a teacher, it does not benefit you when it comes to teaching specific students who go through different things that we don't see as normal, but is normal to them. So I think it's important just so that you can put yourself in the perspective of the reality of a lot of your students and kind of understand how you need to teach them and the things that you need to do to help their learning environment based off of what's home for them.
There's lots of teachers who will walk into a building and don't understand their own cultural difference that they have with their own students. And honestly, to be an educator in this world, like, it's your responsibility to be a culturally diverse teacher. And in order to be a culturally diverse teacher, you have to know your students and you have to understand your own biases that you have.
Every student has different culture backgrounds, and everybody thinks differently, and it's good to have an open mind about it.
Just because we all may look the same doesn't mean we all face the same realities. Like, the African American kids in Gwinnett County aren't the same African American kids versus DeKalb. It's like 30 minutes away. So just because I look like what they put on TV don't mean I am what's on TV. And what's on TV is just entertainment, it's an ad.
I also think that it is very important for teachers to go through a training, not just one time, but I think it should be an ongoing thing, because it takes more than one time. It takes experience for you to unlearn things that you were raised up with thinking and believing. And what I just would like to see happen is that people's mindsets shift. I feel like unconsciously you take your mindset, you take who you are in a classroom, and if it's very one-sided, how can you be the best at reaching your students? That's not possible. So I feel like that will be not only essential, but I think it's needed for where we're going.
Actually, I definitely think it should be an ongoing thing. I didn't even think of it like that. It should be ongoing. And honestly, just to be ingrained in our professional development. As teachers, we go through professional development training, like sessions, like 3, depending on what school you're in, 3-4 times a week. So there's definitely a room for that to be a part of our training, like, daily, because whatever, no matter what school you're in, you're going to have kids all different colors, all different races. So it should absolutely be something that's ongoing throughout our entire professional life. If there's room for us to have professional development days on language arts and writing and reading, testing, assessment, reflections, and data, then there's room for culturally diverse teaching. There's room for it.
African American history be mandatory?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Tell me why.
I definitely feel like African American history should be. I not even African American. I just think African history in general should be something that should be taught more and go into depth and deeper rooted into learning in history, because we go through, elementary school to high school and so on and so forth, learning so much of American history, European history, Asian history, this, that, and the third, and then we spend so little time on like African American history. And what we do learn is, the basics, the slavery, the MLK, things that we know, and like I feel like they kind of, I don't want to say in a way whitewash it, but they they don't tell us enough information.
It's very
polished.
It's very polished. It's very
They
polished.
choose what they want to tell us,
Yes.
and they don't tell us a lot. I've learned more on social media about my history than I have in school.
Yeah.
And that's
Right,
a problem.
and it gets to a point where, as a teacher, and I've been doing this for a very long time, you get into debates with teachers about, oh no, you're not supposed to teach that part.
Don't teach that. That's not on the test.
Yes.
They don't need to
Christopher
learn that
Columbus.
part. Even if it's a segue into something that we're supposed to teach, it's you don't have time to do it. The district assessments are coming up and we do not have time. And in order for these kids to look successful, they need to be able to pass this test with a 70%. And so it does a disservice, as they were saying, because there's no pride in what we do. There's no.
The narrative is lost.
Yep.
Definitely. Dude, I'm doing it just to ensure that you know how to answer this question
And that should
on this test. I know I teach you more of how, if it starts off with who or what or what, like this is how you answer it versus kind of really getting that intrinsic thinking in and making it's not really thought provoking. They don't have to think a whole lot. There's no Black History projects anymore. There's no Black History Months. And so, like they said, it's very, very whitewashed and it's very polished.
And
As
that's
is being said.
and that's why there's just so much confusion, especially for people not for white people. There's so much confusion. They don't know, they're not educated. Like I just said, I learned more on social media than I have in school. If me as an African American student is not learning a lot about my own history, imagine the white people. They don't know anything. So that's why they're completely, they just don't know. And so that's why as we're learning, they're learning as well.
Right.
But we should know prior to learning on social media than somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I also feel like if we make it like deeper than what it is now, I feel like future generations will have less racism than it is now, and people will learn more.
And I definitely feel like what's emphasized in history when we all go to school, what we remember is basically what you guys said, what they want us to remember. Christopher Columbus, he discovered America, this is that and the third. And they polish over all the things that have contributed to our history to paint a picture to what they want it to look like. So African American history and other cultures' history should definitely be implemented, because white history is not the only history that contributed to America. And the culture of our country and the culture of a lot of things that are going on was not built off of what we learned. It was built off other cultures. Exactly. It is very important for us to learn about these other cultures if they are what makes up America. Why are we not learning about what makes up America? We're learning about, this person discovered this by taking this away from this person. Right. But they don't teach it in that light, and we are very lost on what America really is made of. What the sight of America is for a lot of kids who leave the public school system should not be what it is. I in my mind, I shouldn't have, there was a bunch of billions of white people who helped contribute to America, but there was just this one MLK, and there was Rosa Parks, and there was this person that helped contribute to. That's not the truth. So it should definitely be the reality of what America is, not what you want it to be.
The original question about should African American studies be taught in school? I am a graduate student now at Georgia State, and last semester with my group, we read a book called Raising Races. And it was a very, very good book, and it went into so much details about things that happened that I had no idea. For example, it went into details about how they used to showcase hangings and how children would go dressed in their Sunday best clothes like it was a social event.
It was
this is how, and I couldn't help but think, this is how people become racist, because it's normalized to them.
Our just discussion of the Jane Elliott study, Brown Eyes, Blue Eyes, do you all believe that this kind of systemic racism is still going on in education?
Yes.
And how?
I definitely see that, and I just finished my student teaching, and I just graduated, and I see it in my student teaching amongst my peers and my peers and professors, and then I see it also actually in the school system at my school placement, all the school placements that I've been to. There's been incidents where all the students in the class, they'll gang up on the Black girls in the class, or they'll, I don't even know, just bully the Black girls in the class. I've dealt with, honestly, racism within my own class, within people who are supposed to be future educators, whole conversations about, well, this certain black boy kind of deserved to be killed, and this was Tamir Rice, deserved to be killed because he was waving a little toy gun around, and they're trying to justify that. Like, it's just so deep. It goes from kids all the way up to adults.
I've been a teacher in Gwinnett County for almost 15 years. And to be the only black girl on a grade level, I wasn't treated unfairly, but it was very uncomfortable during open houses when the parents get to my classroom and they've gone to administration to ask just to be removed from my classroom because of me and how I look. And I mean, the program that I run now, first 3-star in Gwinnett County. First 3-star after school program in Gwinnett County. And I remember interviewing, the guy came to the school to kind of observe the program because I was trying to reach out then. And YMCAs have all been all over Gwinnett County. And I was blessed to have a principal who saw the vision that I had. But at the time, I wasn't ready, but I was reaching out to another school. Principal came over, and after he left, he asked me for data that supports direct student achievement for my after school program. YMCA don't get asked that. Right? Direct. And at that moment, I felt pressed, and they know I started putting up data that reflected our students in camp success. Did I ever send any information over to that man? I did not, because I felt somewhat disrespected. I'm guilty of my own biases, because when Brianna is preparing to go to interview at a school, what is my thing to her? Brianna, don't go with them puffballs in your hair like that. Don't go, don't go with that. Put your straight wig on. Put that straight wig, because I want her to have the best opportunity, because I know how they think. I have a little in my voice, and so people know when I talk, I'm a black girl. So I've always had to deal with the systematic racism. I've always had to work harder than they were.
That is
harder.
Always have to work
just to be in the same place as they are.
And do their job better than
they do.
And you know what? I'm not even gonna say do it better, but it's just I have to work so much harder. I gotta stay later at the schools. I have to.
You gotta prove yourself.
I'm always trying to prove myself.
Just going in a student's perspective, I have been at predominantly white schools since I have been in kindergarten, and I was always singled out as the smart black girl. That's the black girl that she's like those other kids, but she black. That's the smart black girl. We know her as the smart black girl. And even when I got it wasn't as prevalent to me as when I was younger, but when I got to like middle school, high school, and I started being in my accelerated classes, my AP classes, I noticed it was just me in there. Like there's like one other black person, one other person of color in the classroom with me, and I was always looked at as I don't want to work in her group. Like, it was obvious amongst my peers, amongst a lot of my teachers. They were all, you need a little extra help? No, I'm in this class for a reason. Like, so it as in the perspective of a student, it has always been that way since I've been little. Like, there's always been a feeling of being an outsider. There's always been that feeling, okay, they're looking at me different. There's always been that feeling like, oh, you're going to show them that you're smart. They don't think you are. You're going to show them. So with there being, if it was like that for me when I was younger, I can only imagine how it is for these little girls and boys now. So it definitely does exist in the education system.
And there's a definite disparity amongst gifted education programs and African American students. There's a disproportionate amount of referrals and how harsh our African American boys are treated. There are a disproportionate amount of African American teachers. I know we addressed that already.
Continuing to feed the misconception that African Americans are illiterate, and those are systematic things and things that you do unconsciously. And even though I never voiced it to her, it was just like, you don't even understand, how that just made us feel.
Y'all know they always told you to take the ACT instead of the SAT, because the ACT is more for people of color or black people in the SAT,
100%.
and I never
I took
under.
both.
That's why I took both.
100%.
Me
And
too.
to me, I was like, I mean, I guess they say a little bit easier, but
Don't
yeah,
put
a
me
test
in
is
the-
a
don't put me
test,
right.
right? I
Right.
mean, if you're not good at test taking, a test don't tell everything a kid knows.
Right.
But the fact that they even split down to that, like to that level, like okay, now you gotta look for schools who take both, or schools that might take one, and now you
Even-
set yourself up for more failures.
In the education, just appearance. Going to a very, very predominantly white school and being a black girl in a predominantly white school, my peers who are non-black, my white peers can come in with running shorts, tank tops, all of that stuff, but let me come in with the same apparel. That's too revealing. That's too tight. So it's always been a bias there as well, and you want to relate it to body types, but that's not even the case, because there are a lot of people who look like me that are targeted because we're more revealing and we're more this and we're more that, whereas someone has the exact same thing that I have on, the exact same body type that I have, she's just white. But it's okay. It's a pass for her. Like, things like that were, and it was even, it made it worse because it was even some of the teachers, some of the APs, some of the administrators who look like me. And it's like, come on now, like, you have to implement a rule that you're not even implementing to everybody. That's not fair. You're pointing me out. Right, like, and so it's not even just with the books, it's not even just with the classroom, it's everywhere. Like in schools everywhere, you can see the bias when it comes to where students sit in lunch. You can see the bias with how if I'm a student and I may not have a discipline file at all. There was a time where I got into an altercation at my school. Oh, and the athletic director, when I was telling him about it, he took me as a joke. A white athletic director, he was like, oh, was she clapping her hands at you, like making it a joke? Oh, and I'm showing him pictures, trying to show her, oh, is that her baby in the picture? Like, stuff like that. And it's like, oh, if this was my peers that did not look like me, my white peers, it would be, oh, let's sit down. We need to write a report about this. How do you want to handle it? But when it's me, it's fun and games. Like, so things like that have been prevalent since I have been like 7 years old. So it's everywhere in the school system.
I agree. I think it helps to foster individuality. It allows students to think for themselves, and it challenges, and you cannot, in order to fully grow and blossom, you have to be challenged with somebody that does not see something the same way as you do. Yeah. You got to be able to prove your case and to debate your case and be able to listen to the other person's case, and you guys come, it may not be an agreement, but at least now we both hear it. There has to be a safe space for it, and by incorporating that in education, you're creating a platform and a space for those conversations to be had, because we know, especially in middle school and high school studies, a lot of the studies go along with the discussion with it. Yeah. That's a perfect opportunity to bring up those discussions in a safe place. Yeah. So I agree that would be very beneficial.
Right, but we do have to ensure that the persons who are teaching,
yes,
they are comfortable enough to be open enough to be condemned or have their ideologies challenged.
And that's a problem
if they're white, if they're like, they have to feel comfortable. So undoing those biases, and I think the system needs to have teachers undergo some sort of psychological undoing first. We can make all these mandates, but undoing this, how our thinking, undoing my thinking when it comes to her puffball, undoing that thinking, undoing that thinking where I feel like I have to get a white guy to go to my principal to approve my program, undoing that first. So before we can even address this excellent, that work needs to be done, but I think that we have to address the psychological aspect.
It has to start from the head, most definitely.
Definitely. And the fact that, just piggybacking off of what you said, the fact that there are teachers who are uncomfortable with discussing other people's history is part of the problem. Because why are you so comfortable to be in a classroom and talk about this, and this is what I believe, and this is my opinion. You need to stand up for this Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance may be okay for you, but I can't stand by the same things, because in your reality, sure, all that stuff is true, but in my reality, it's not. So you can't expect me to be, as a Black student, you can't expect other Black students or other students of color to feel a certain way about a history that is not theirs. And you can't be uncomfortable with learning about your students. You can't, like Ms. Bing was saying earlier, you cannot be a successful and an all-around good teacher and a better teacher if you are not even comfortable with learning your students and discussing the differences between you and your students, and figuring out how you can cultivate the classroom to make it a comfortable and safe environment. Because I can promise you, a lot of people of color do not feel safe or do not feel comfortable in a school environment, and that's a problem. Like, that's a huge problem, and that it goes back to the head, like you guys were saying. A lot of work needs to be done.
You know, that
a
history,
whole lot.
The history part, even with the national anthem, it didn't matter regardless who won. Great Britain could have won. We still would have been slaves.
Right.
It didn't matter. Like, legit, did not matter. Only reason why we were free was so that Lincoln could have more soldiers on his side. He didn't want to free us. He said, if I can keep the Union together, I will. And not free the slaves. But after free the slaves to win, then I'll do that too. He didn't care about us. And then when he freed the Deep South, he kept 3 states as border states just in case the South, shall rise, come through there. It's a buffer. So, and they didn't even get free until, I don't know the exact date, but they didn't get free like probably 3 years later after the war or something like that.
And that's a challenge that a teacher would have to understand. And if they challenge you, they should be okay with you saying what you just said and comfortable enough to possibly challenge you, even if they're white, like challenge that. Maybe they have, but have an open dialogue and not feel some type of way. And as I've stated before, I don't know how it feels to sit in a white woman's shoes who have to teach 25 Black kids about a civil war. I don't know how that feels on the inside. I don't know. I don't know if it's an attack that she feels. I don't know if she feels it. I could imagine that it's uncomfortable. I could imagine, right or wrong, I don't know. Should she or should, I don't know. But at the end of the day, I could imagine that having that conversation, being as open as we want a Caucasian person to be, or somebody else that's not Black to be, to have these conversations would possibly be uncomfortable. So undoing that, because Jarvis was telling us yesterday about the teacher who was that with the cotton and the pink.
Oh yeah.
And you said you appreciate there were 2 white teachers.
I had 2 white teachers. One of them in 8th grade. She
call her name out.
I don't remember her name. 8th grade. But she gave us the opportunity to actually like get a feel of what it was like to be in that. So not like she said nothing bad. She was like, okay, so slaves, they didn't get the best food. They got molasses. They got the cornbread, the back fat.
Leftovers.
Yeah, the leftovers. And she took it out of her own time to bring that for a full class set. We ate it. We was like, this ain't the best, but I guess it's food.
A really big step is that you're taking the time to educate yourself.
Right.
So there are so many people who know that they know nothing about Black culture. They know nothing about our perspective, and they don't want to know, which is a big problem. But you are part of the solution because you know what it's like to be in this bracket, this little space that we're put in, and you're taking the time to educate yourself on it. We get educated on things that we don't even want to be educated on for these people.
And honestly too, I can think about what was mentioned earlier, you learn more on Instagram and on social media than we do in my 12 years of being in public school and private school. For example, I did not know about Juneteenth until I became an undergraduate student. And all of these years, Black people were free on this day, not knowing that their many people's freedom didn't come to months, some years after it was declared. Why is that not in history books? Why do we not know that? We should know that.
You were saying something.
Go ahead, Stephanie.
Oh, so going back to what, educating myself and all that, I come from, a Hispanic household, and, there's, prejudice, and you can be prejudiced in any Like,
Definitely.
anything. And coming from a Hispanic household, like, you know, like they see us Black people as, you know, bad people sometimes because of the news.
Yeah.
And I feel like if we open the subject more and like expand it more, I feel like kids will understand it like way better, and like you guys said, like have your own opinion about it. And because like your parents will only tell you what they want, they like, and what they so I think it's better to expand it.
Yes, thank you.
This is so good.